Hello, everybody. I'm Daniel Shankin of TAM Integration, and welcome back to another talk, not another episode, another talk of the second annual Mount TAM Integration Jam, where we're celebrating good psychedelic practice. We're going to be talking about alignment to the soul. I am here with Dr. Will Su. Uh, Will has a doctorate in immunology from the University of Oxford, psychiatric training at Harvard Medical School. He's a public educator, speaker, and advisor, a co-principal investigator on a pilot research study exploring MDMA-assisted psychotherapy for fibromyalgia. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for having me. This is fun.
Yeah, we've been having a good time today.
Great.
And your talk, you want to talk about aligning to the soul as a model for psychedelic integration.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, this came from, I think like most of my philosophy, most of the way I work did not come. I mean, I entered the whole psychedelic therapy space, or first became even aware of it in 2012. And I think by 2013, 14 is when I started trying psychedelics. And so, there's many right ways that I think I did it, and there's many more wrong ways, and or ways that I think, I was hurt by or made me question things. And so there was a lot of trial and error, I would say, in my experience. But I think that's what sort of allowed me to come to the different philosophies around how I work, and the different aspects of psychedelic work and how they fit in, and kind of what they are and what they are not. And I think there's a lot of interest right now, but I think the I think information, I think, from really experienced clinicians is minimal out there right now. I'm not saying that you have to be a clinician, but I would say really knowledgeable people that know how to use these medicines is not out there. And there's actually a lot of misinformation, I would say, right now, especially in the last year and a half, with it seems like everybody coming up with their own courses on how to do things. And I think, what I've learned is really that it's really, just learning about healing or learning about anything, really, it's just reading something is minimal. It's like a start, and sometimes it can be like this facade of actual knowledge, where I think, intellectual knowledge is one level of understanding, but then embodying and being able to live the lessons is a whole nother ball game. So, when I thought about integration, and when I think about integration, I mean, I've never seen a single definition or a method that I have seen out there that anyone has that I would say that is in alignment with myself, or that I think it's really guiding people in the way I see, and of what I think about is, what I do with people, or what I do with myself after a psychedelic experience. And I'm purposely not, I almost don't want to use the word integration, because I feel like it's one of those words like God that like some people use, and everyone means something different by it. And so
I like this. Like
Mhm.
you, what I'm almost hearing is that you kind of wish that you could go and work with yourself to receive integration.
Yes, well, I mean, that's exactly kind of what we're talking about. So,
Yeah.
when I say alignment to the soul, when I think about our journey, well, maybe I'll start with an image of what I actually think of as sort of this particular analogy I'm about to share is something I share with patients most of the time on day one when I meet with them, which is, to me, each human being is sort of like a prism, and PRISM. And, say if you think of the prism and the white light coming in, and then you have this spectrum of a rainbow that comes out. I think that prism represents this like material, physical thing, which is very much the human body, the human experience here on Earth. And whether you're religious or not, right, that white light to me can represent source or God, whatever it is. But most people with psychedelics, have some sense of there's something that we come from, or something that creates us. Then there's this prism, and then there's this emanation, right? And I think of that emanation as being completely unique. And I would actually call it a potential emanation. I wouldn't actually call it like a clear emanation, meaning each human being in the course of our life has this potential to create, to emanate, to share, that is completely unique to any human being that's living right now. and, which is a big deal to be like this uniqueness of each of us, of 8 billion or so people. And that has, unique to anyone that's ever lived or that ever will live. And remember the first time I had this thought, it was bone chilling, because I'm like, this is an opportunity. And it's an opportunity that's not just going to happen. I can either take it or not. I can also not emanate. And to me, I by that stage of my life course, I was like, I find nothing more painful, even now, than to not fully express my emanation and who I am. And so the reason I bring that up is because the way I think about then, why aren't we emanating, right, fully, most authentically? It's because different things like culture, family, religion, trauma, right, start telling us, oh, make your red more bright. That's very valuable. You should want that. Or get rid of your green. That's really, that you should be ashamed of that. Like, let's get it out of here. Or, oh, like if you shine more blue, you're gonna get more money, you'll be more successful, right? So we do all these things. We kind of put like filters on the prism, or we put like mud on the prism to try to get rid of certain things. And then what happens when we do that? If you clutter a prism, if you stop it, right, it's gonna like hold light, it's gonna hold heat, it's gonna warm up, it's like it's gonna start leaking into other places. And that's sort of what I think about most people, honestly, like on Earth right now. But it's this example of what happens when that energy is blocked, right? We get symptoms, we get depression, right? Even the word depression, what does that actually mean? We're depressing, we're suppressing something like emotions, our authenticity, and that leads to pain. And so when I think about alignment to the soul in terms of integration, really the only reason I was using, the word integration is because that's what this event is about. But it's really like, how do we reconnect to our authentic emanation, right? And to me, I have a strong sense of what that is for myself, or the top 2 or 3 things that someone is working on, who's working with me, before we even enter, or they go to do a psychedelic experience, right? So that way we have some grounding of, okay, so actually, let me take a step back. So in terms of this prism analogy, right? So then it's like, okay, well, I'm confused. Like mom, dad acted like this, so this made me want this. And I call this sort of the difference between true values versus perceived values, right? True values are things that, again, are our essence, are part of our authentic emanation. But I call the others perceived values because they were so ingrained so heavily, or they are ingrained so early that they masquerade as true values. So it can be very confusing as we re-engage our healing journey of, what do I really want? And so the signs for what we want or what we don't want all come from within us. And this is a key thing, right? Because that we are the only person for ourselves who can determine, how should I be living or not, right? But most people out there right now are seeking that from the outside. Who's the teacher that's going to teach it? Who's the good shaman to go to? What book should I read? What course should I sign up for? Right? There's all this outside. And so to me, this alignment to the soul is this alignment to ourselves, right? And it's bringing attention to, I am the only one that really knows. That doesn't mean that we won't seek help on the way. We need help, we need other people, but we need to be very careful in terms of who and what we are allowing in while we are in these very open, vulnerable positions with psychedelics, right? There's this old, I don't know who the quote's attributed to, you might be able to tell me, but there's this quote that says something like you can only get as high as your shaman's gotten, right? Meaning there's this thought that, oh my God, the Shipibos now, they're wearing white, maestro, right? People call their Shipibo ayahuasca healers often maestro. In their own communities, they don't refer to them like that.
I've actually heard it on the flip side from coaching training and coaching schools. You can only guide somebody as deep as you've gone.
Yeah, which is, I think that's mostly true. I actually think we can at times guide people through more. But anyway, as a general rule, it's important to pay attention to, because if people are like me, I had this, I chatted with Gabor Mate. Probably most people here are familiar with him, for a project that I'm working on. So I was in Vancouver visiting him a couple of weeks ago, and I'd gone to do ayahuasca with him in Peru. He had organized a retreat in 2019. He invited me down. It was this 2-week retreat, incredibly expensive. and he was supposed to lead the entire thing. And after the first ceremony, Gabor was actually removed. He was actually, the Shipibos told him, your energy is too dark. It's impacting everybody else here. We need to take you away. And this, it was a very, very obviously big deal for the group of us. But he and I were talking sort of in retrospect how, things he took away and things I took away. And for me, it was another wake-up call. After I thought I'd been done, I was like, I realized I had put him on a pedestal, and I had gone there to get him to help me. So for him to be essentially removed, on day 2 was this beautiful, ultimately beautiful, experience that I had to find that within myself. And so now getting a little bit back to how do we get to aligning to the soul then, right? If this is something that's unconscious that we're not aware of, I sort of think about if our life journey, if our calling, if people believe in that, or even just our life purpose, we don't even have to call it calling, is to say as an image is represented. I think you guys froze. All right, am I back? Sorry, I think I froze.
You never left for me.
Okay, you guys were frozen. Okay. The last thing I said, I think, is this. Okay, so if we were going to represent like the calling, my journey, this is what I'm here to do. And say we represent that, say, like a car. Say my journey starts in Los Angeles, and and by the end of my life, I will reach New York City, right? That's my life trajectory. But that, again, because mom or dad programming, culture, school says, oh no, you should maybe go to Miami instead. Miami is where the great stuff is. And so we start turning in a different direction. And then we start feeling pain and suffering, right? So what do? We turn off the volume on the GPS, right? Oh, what's that nagging thing in my ear saying, oh, make a U-turn. So we turn it off, right? This is dissociation from the nervous system. This is turning off, learning to not express ourselves. Right. So by the time most people are looking for healing, they're so lost in who they are, and they're even disconnected from the signals, right? The emotions are essentially our GPS signals that say this is in alignment with you or it's not, right?
I was with a friend of mine once. I'll make it quick. I was with a friend of mine once, and we were high at his house, and he started walking around his house being like, whose stuff is this? This art on the wall doesn't have anything to do with me. These books on the shelves, this art, none of this is mine. Like this, none of this has anything. He had created an entire apartment of things that he thought he was supposed to like.
Yeah, beautiful. And this supposed to, right? And I think most people can resonate with that because we leave more and more behind. And so my big wake-up call for this or moment, I think it was probably my first or second LSD experience. This is a long time ago. It's an interesting, but it was so drastic. So I had done my PhD at Oxford in England, as you had said. And so I don't know, at that point I was still like wearing brands. And I remember one of the things I was most proud of coming back was I used to wear my England football jersey or soccer jersey, and it was something that, I felt represented. People would ask me, and then I would be like, oh, I went to Oxford. And it was this like subtle way, I remember now looking back, of like showing something about myself. And I remember I had this LSD experience, and I went back and I saw that soccer shirt, and it gave me nausea. And actually I threw it away. And I'm like, I'm like, this is causing, like, even by wearing this shirt, I'm saying, I am this, you are this, as subtle as that. And that was the end of me wearing any sort of branded items. And I lost interest in sports after, thinking I liked them growing up. But I was just like, what is this about? And so, but this isn't something that we get a lot of guidance on in terms of what do I like, what don't I like, or sometimes, again, the practitioners, the facilitators are not up to speed on their own stuff. And so, they have their own hangups, and if a practitioner or a therapist, whether licensed or not, has similar hangups as us, they can end up reinforcing some of the misalignments, right? And it can be a very confusing time. And so, this alignment to the soul, that I talked about is really about how does each person figure this out for themselves. And I emphasize that a lot for the clients that I work with, and I'm like, I'm just helping you. And I really feel that now, where I'm just like, I don't know what is best for you, but let me help you figure out based on the stories you're telling me, but based on how you tell me you're suffering, based on your upbringing, and I might help you be able to piece together this, what might actually be true values versus perceived values, but you've got to go out and test them in the world, right? And I think for me, that's why it's much more helpful to have some sense of where am I aligned, where am I misaligned. I feel like most people, even when they don't do psychedelics or aren't interested in psychedelics that come to see me, there's like 1, 2, or 3 major stories or patterns that are recurring in someone's life, a repeating thing in a romantic life or a repeating thing at work. And why am I stuck here? And that's usually to me like a sign that those are the things that the psyche wants to deal with. They're kind of at the top of the pressure cooker to come out.
Mhm.
And so that's, how I work with someone to gather that stuff even before they ever go on a plane to get to do ayahuasca. And so, and many of the centers have told me, Will, we really enjoy your patients. They tend to do really well here. And they seem to take away a lot, where I think about back to when even I used to go to early ayahuasca retreats myself or other psychedelic experiences. I didn't really even, when people also, another one of these buzzwords is intention. Oh, what's your intention? And I remember early on, it used to be for me stuff like, oh, I want to let in more love, we're okay, but I think,
Well, hey, me too.
Yeah. And so, I think we could all use a little bit more of that, but those didn't end up being as like tangible for me, and I think it's, sometimes there's an externalization of that power, even to the plant medicine. How many people are like, oh, Pachamama told me this, or Mother Ayahuasca, and I've talked to the Shipibos. Even I speak Spanish, so when I go down to Peru, I often it's not just a ceremony, I'll sit and chit chat with them on the days off and stuff, and they don't genderize ayahuasca. I've never had a Shipibo healer be like, yes, the plant spirit for ayahuasca is female. Like it's very much a Western projection upon the healing mechanism, but also the fact that that these images we know for a fact are something that exists that is outside of us. Like I think what we call plant spirits may very well be our own visualization, a projection of what we need to heal ourselves. Or like if we think of IFS and parts work, it might just be a visualization of a part. That's not to say I know for a fact that there are no plant spirits. I can't say that. Or there aren't guardian angels. I can't say that. But I also think the converse is also true, is no one can prove to me that those things are real, right? So to me, all I know is that I am real. I'm here. We're talking here, but and I've had some very interesting experiences. But yeah. Anyway,
what would be the difference if you knew for a fact that it was a part of you versus if you knew for a fact that it was a plant spirit outside yourself? How would your relationship be different?
Well, so for me, right, the thing is, I feel like I can't go wrong being a human being trying to be more in my humanness by saying this is within me, right? Because that is empowering myself. And I think that, would it change the way I see things? And I actually haven't told you whether or not I believe they're real. It's different. But what I've seen is a consistent disempowerment of saying I'm being healed, the plant thing, spirit is doing that to me, and that is where I think we run into trouble, right? Because I think if there is really a central intelligence, a God, etc., it's probably not going to get upset with us if we say, oh, okay, I actually think that it was within me, right? Like it's if there really is this big, loving, warm God, it's not going to get mad at us for that, right?
For taking all the credit for the wisdom.
But for reversing it and actually saying all this lies with outside of me, I actually think there is potentially this harmful effect on ourselves and someone else too, right? So, but yeah, I mean, but maybe to answer your question, or you didn't ask me, but yeah, if people are curious, I actually do think plants have spirits. I actually do think there are such things as guardian angels. We can get into why though, but it's actually been a big journey for me in the last year and a half to where I actually feel some solidity around that. Yet I still don't know what role they play in my day-to-day healing or within ceremony. I still don't, I still think we have the ability to project and create an image that may not actually be something.
That's interesting because a big part of my journey was taking more personal responsibility. Like it all seemed very external at first. I started kind of young, and gods and demons and angels and Hanuman, started showing up. And it wasn't until later learning about things like IFS and Gestalt and things like that, it was like, oh, like like the thing that's yelling at me might actually be my own critical nature,
Mm.
you
Yeah.
know, and things like, you know, sort of getting into what's going on inside.
Yeah. Yeah. Because there's also distractions. I mean, I remember one of I used to watch many more Terence McKenna videos earlier in my psychedelic sort of exploration life. But one of the things that always stood out with me is he was describing DMT experiences, which to me completely, and then DMT experiences to me completely mirror the same space for me as ayahuasca. Where he would say, like, if you're in a certain space where there's, it's beautiful complexity and oh my God, you're in that place, he would say, don't give in to the illusion, or sorry, he would say, don't give in to the magnificence or something like that. And every time I remembered to do that in session, and Terence would describe the same thing about himself. It's like bringing this awareness, or no, he would say, don't give in to the awe. That I remember now.
Right.
It's like when I remembered that, or the astonishment, boom, I would like get thrown into another place, right? So that's the thing. I think there's this trickster energy, especially I've experienced with DMT or ayahuasca, where it can be like, okay, are you going to get fascinated and lost here? We'll keep you here. Or are you going to go to this other place, right? Now, I'm not someone who says there's such a thing as higher, lower. I don't like that sort of language, but there is this like trickster energy to it, meaning like, I think you can get presented with things or hear things that are not true, right? I mean, how many people have I heard that come out and say, oh, like, I experienced that I used to be a shaman in a past life, and now I'm going to become a facilitator for psychedelic. I mean, it has to be like one of the top 3 things that people often take away, and are past lives real? Maybe, maybe not. Even if you were that in a past life, does it mean that that's what you're meant to do now? I don't know. It's I think up to each person to figure that out.
Oh, that happens in real life too. And we have words like, mesmerize, captivate, like glamour and fascination, like all of these words that, captivate is to make one a captive. If you can't,
I love that.
if you can't stay aligned, to use your language, align, if you can't stay centered in the midst of like all of this kind of complexity and brilliance, you lose your capacity to move from a conscious place.
Precisely. And it reminds me of this, I mean, the balance also of I don't know if people are into chakras. I mean, I believe in the energies. I don't know. I mean, for me, I haven't memorized the colors or the symbols for each of the chakras, but it always reminds me of this, or this saying, that people often say that, we're spiritual beings having a human experience, and,
right.
and I think that there's something beautiful and true about that. And I think one of the things that people can do, though, is get lost in the spiritual experience and think that that is the only thing that's real, that's what I want, that's more real than here. Like when people call this reality an illusion, I don't buy that. You know what I mean? It's an experience, but to call this less real than whatever we experience when we are in an ayahuasca journey, I think is complete garbage. And in terms of this balance, go ahead.
Well, I think it's projection, because the illusion is that Dan.
Yeah.
Like all of these parts of me that I think are real is the real illusion, and I'm so committed to my Oxford jersey, right? Ram Dass would call those things so delicious for the ego.
Yep.
Right. I'm so committed to all of these things that are so delicious, and then I take my, I engage in the sacrament, and then all that stuff loosens up, and then I'm more real.
Yeah. Although the thing is, right, I don't think that will is the illusion either. The thing is, I think it being only will is an illusion, and it only being that blown away 5-MeO DMT experience where it's all white light is also, if it's only that, it's the illusion. And I was speaking to Rick Doblin, who's been a friend and a dear teacher and mentor for some time. And we were some years ago around this, where I was like getting into Buddhism and meditation, and like nothing can hurt me, like this is all an illusion. And I was finding honestly that I was getting hurt, and I was letting people people were just taking advantage, not taking advantage. I would say like I was dropping my boundaries, and people were like, okay, like let me take from you. And he referred back to a conversation he had with Stan Groff at Esalen some decades ago when they were having a similar conversation. Because I was basically telling Rick, like, oh, I don't need ego, like let me get rid of this. And he's like, no, well, he's like, why wouldn't you want your ego, right? And that's the thing. It's almost saying like, oh, there's no prism or emanation. We're all white light. again, maybe a pretty statement, but the reality is it's not true. We're all sitting here now. So it's, anyway, so I always remember Rick in this conversation, because he said what Stan said to him in that moment when they were discussing a similar topic. He's like, Stan said to Rick, Rick, you don't want to make, you don't want to get rid of the ego. You want to make it transparent to the transcendent. Okay, so I mean, we
Yes,
want awareness of the
that's a good way
prism,
of putting it.
we want awareness of the light, and we want awareness of the emanation. If we can balance all of those, I think that is the magnificence of being a human being. You know, back to what you were saying about Ram Dass, my therapist has told me recently also, he uses the word possessed. Like when we become possessed by an emotion, we become possessed by the idea. And we have to do that. That is when it becomes problematic, right? But that's usually when we are either not in balance with one or the other, right? The transcendent or the ego itself. So yeah, so to me, it's, again, that's the beauty of the human being, is this temporary yet real manifestation of something greater.
I like that quite a bit. Yeah, I mean, I still struggle, as you can probably tell, with, you know, how real are all the things.
Yeah,
How
I mean,
real-
I would say, you know, that's the thing. Like consciousness, I think, is something that's incredibly fundamental to reality. I mean, I've gone deep down rabbit holes of people who write about this. I do think that mind and thought and consciousness is something that is creative, that even creates matter. Maybe we don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole, but the thing is, like, I would say whatever there is awareness at, for me, at any particular moment, is real, you know. And it's kind of trippy sometimes, because sometimes it's like, oh my God, we have these powerful psychedelic experiences, etc. And I remember there was one in particular, I'm like, oh my God, look at Source, and there's all this thing. And I came down and I'm like, wait, there's still Amazon and Amazon Prime, and there's like barcodes, and I'm like like getting tripped up, and I'm like, it's all just real, right? It's all this, the emanation of just humanity.
I think what I'm maybe trying to say is that we miss a lot of what's real due to the self-centeredness, due to like fascination with our whole trip.
Yeah, or I don't know if it's fascination or if when then we get fixated within it, or something
Fixated.
throws us off, because like there's this Carlos Castaneda quote that comes to mind, which or Don Juan. I mean, so he writes about Don Juan, and so I happen to believe that Don Juan was a real person, and there's some people in my life that I know had direct connection to Don Juan. But anyway, for those who haven't read it, I would recommend The Teachings of Don Juan. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful book that's
Oh, it's been like
underread in the
25
psychedelic
years.
community.
It's
Yeah.
been like 30 years since I've read that.
Yeah. The reason I bring that up is because it's a short quote by Don Juan, but he says something to the effect of, the aim is to balance the wonder of being alive with the terror of being alive. And for me, that's always struck true, meaning I think sometimes when we suffer and we grasp, it's because if we get too much into the magnificence, like, and we're aware of that all day, every day, and we're surrounded by people who, and a humanity that's not seeing that, it can be a very painful thing if we stick to that. And we're like, why is so much suffering? And we feel like it's not actionable. Or on the other end of the spectrum, when it's just, you know, the terror, and when we just get locked into the fear and me, and oh my God, I'm going to die, and I'm going to lose my stuff, and I need more stuff or more money to be safe, right? So I think this balancing of wonder and terror, I think, is something that's always resonated with me since I've read it.
It's a fun place to be. I mean, it's probably a very relatable place to be.
Yeah.
I think there's a question. What was Will's comment on the pure white light while on 5-MeO?
What was my comment on that? I think, you know, when I think of, you know, let me see, we're doing okay on time, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
When I think of the different psychedelic, the point I was trying to make, I don't remember exactly what I was trying to say. So on this sort of
Integrating.
you know, yeah, this discussion that we have, and I think balance is something that maybe I'm emphasizing, underlying most of what I'm saying, is that I started thinking about psychedelics and the different psychedelics, and that they play different roles and they can help with different things. And I started thinking of this analogy of a cross, where on the vertical, so if we take that chakra analogy, it's like opening the 6th and 7th chakra, opening to whatever we call it, the white light, the energy, source, God. and I think the most consistent medicines that do that would probably be 5-MeO DMT and DMT, right? But then others like ayahuasca or mushrooms or LSD, you do enough of them, they'll get you there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think of the horizontal portion of a cross, where I think of the grounded, the relational, material, my family, where I think the most masterful molecule that does that is MDMA, right? MDMA rarely will get transpersonal, right? Like MDMA stays 98% of the time. I mean, I've definitely had visions and other stuff, but it's rare, right? But MDMA stays on the plane of what I would call this reality, birth to now, my relationships. And so it's this horizontal piece, right? And so I think of this like cross analogy for myself, because often when I'm working with people or if I'm working on something in myself, I'm kind of seeing where is the person struggling,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because sometimes people are overdoing the psychedelics, especially these days, right? Because if you, I think about what gets in some ways I feel like I'm fortunate because I have a career. I mean, I'm a middle class doctor who lives in a safe neighborhood with trees and stuff, but meaning I have a way to make a living in a profession, even if I don't do psychedelic therapy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's like it's so in terms of what I mean by that is that you have a lot of people that are like, sound facilitators, sound healers, and like it's like everyone's picking up now. It's like, oh my God, there's such a big market for this. And what gets the wow, what gets people to come back, what gets people to tell stories to their friends is the bigger transpersonal experiences, right? Oh,
Right.
I opened to this and this happened, and I saw I went to that pure white too, and it's like, but I haven't seen anyone from sustained or that tried DMT or either of the DMTs who had any sustained change. There are plenty of stories that are told about it, but in terms of people who I've seen that have made day-to-day changes in the way they're living their life, in their relationships to their friends, their family, or work, I haven't seen it. That's not to say that these aren't very important experiences, right? I started today by saying DMT is my favorite. Why? Because it was this early beacon as I was really struggling and living on the horizontal, that I had this powerful experience, right? At that point, I was atheist. I had not tried drugs. And I had this very powerful experience of the vertical where I was like, there's something else there. It was real. It's tangible.
Mm-hmm.
And that was important to start my balance of this cross, right? But so for me, the white light comment was again, it serves a purpose, but sometimes people can get enticed by that and being like, oh, just because I've touched it or I keep touching it, that means I'm doing better. And I don't think that often that distracts from the actual relational work that we're here to do as human beings between ourselves and other humans.
Do you think this is, sometimes I feel like the shorter acting molecules leave less room for work, that they have these really interesting experiences, but there's not this sort of wrestling with the angels that happens in the longer acting psychedelics?
Yeah. What comes up for me when you mention this is there's this beautiful, I think it's people I think attribute it, either it says like a Chinese proverb or a Confucian proverb usually when you look it up online, but it's a short quote and it says, tell me and I will forget, show me and I might remember, involve me and I will understand.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. At the beginning of The World Religions by Houston Smith, it starts off with a quote that says, most of what is in this book we already know, yet we never learn. So the tell me, show me, involve me to me are very meaningful to me, because I think right now, especially in the day and age of data, there's plenty of tell me out there. There's plenty of beautiful quotes on Instagram. There's, I don't know how many, like every wellness practitioner seems to have written a book now of their 10 steps to finding enlightenment. And we still are living in probably the most unconnected, violent times in human history, right? Because often people, because we've lived in such a mind, we've separated mind body. It's like, oh, because I know something, because I read it, I know it, right? Which is a complete fallacy. And so most people are living in this tell me and I will forget and thinking it's something real.
Mm-hmm.
And so I actually think that psychedelics are one of the, even though I'm not downing psychedelics, I hope it's not coming out as that. It's just, but I often have this saying that I'll say, I think psychedelics are neither sufficient nor necessary for healing. but
Yes.
but together with an
Correct.
empathic witness, it's the most powerful tool we have. Okay, so it's just seeing that it's a tool. The reason I bring that up is because I think any psychedelic experience, even the short ones, but I think more so the medium term or long term acting ones, are not just to tell me. It's actually a show me, right? Like it's a powerful experience that you have over a course of time. I mean, it's much more powerful than just reading a line. Or you know, you could take a year-long course with Fluence or Psychedelics Today or whatever on psychedelics and just read about them. But you go to an ayahuasca retreat that's held in a good place, that will teach you much more than a year of just doing didactics and reading.
Yes.
And so, you know, I think what you're referring to in terms of the time periods is this tell me, show me, and then the finals involve me. And I think the involve me, that's where the embodiment and the real magic is. And this is the integration that I would say that we keep referring to, is that to me, I don't think that's meant to be done in a altered state. To me, the involve me is to be embodied here in life, to reorganize our relationships, to say no to the people or situations that are blocking our emanation, and then inviting in and taking risks to invite people and situations in that will help us to, you know, emanate at that most authenticity. I think that is the difficult stuff. You know, that's you know, the thing that leads to the significant shifts in life, I think.
That's kind of where an intention almost becomes a commitment. Like, oh, I want to like let more love in, and then they, you know, okay, well, be nice to people that piss you off.
Yeah, exactly. No, those are the thing. No, it's beautiful. Yeah, that is where the intention, I think, when they're put that way. But again, I think there's some pressure when one goes to an ayahuasca retreat and, you know, you're going in a circle and like, what's your intention? You're like, oh fuck, like they're talking about soul and love, and I'm like, God, I just really like would like a easier time dating because you know, I tend to self-isolate or something like that, where it's like, you know, when I think we actually make it more real to what we're actually going through is when we get the most out of it, you know. And so I think, yeah, these intentions more like that. So why, you know, how is anger playing a role in me pushing people away? You know, why am I still getting triggered? And, you know, I mean, this is stuff that's real to me. I mean, my last ayahuasca retreat was, again, this is just last year. And, you know, by then I'd been doing a lot of public speaking and, oh, I'm this healer. And it hit me midway through. I'm like, it's my anger, my triggers that are getting in the way of getting deeper into medicine. Cause I'd gotten pissed off at one of the facilitators because, you know, I was experiencing nausea and vomiting, you know, the day after a ceremony. And I thought I, you know, knew much more. And I thought I had a Giardia infection. And I'm like, I'm a doctor. I know what you're not. And I was just like, I had to like eat my own words in the end. I'm like, no, like this is just, I don't know. And so
this is one of the things that I like about the therapeutic use of psychedelics, you know, like medicalization and therapeutic use is I came to this through kind of the Be Here Now school. Like I came to this through spiritual angles and yoga and meditation, all that kind of stuff. And the goals were very lofty. It's like, we're going to penetrate the furthest gate of the Dharma. We're going to achieve enlightenment in this lifetime. And I was like, I need a job. You know, it's like, you know, that this kind of stuff. It's like, I just need to, I need to deal with my emotions. I need to deal with my anger. I need to relate to people differently. And the kind of the democratization of your desires and goals, like that you're allowed to want whatever you want, and that's okay, and you get to grow in the direction you want to go. You want to go to New York, you go to New York. Don't let the Buddha tell you should go to Ohio.
I think that's the thing. If we are being pulled or called to do something, I actually think it is, and it's tricky though, right? Because it's one thing, again, is am I being pulled by my old programming, or am I being pulled by my essence, who is telling me to go have an experience that's going to be very meaningful to me? And I think that's the trick between this, again, the perceived values versus true values. But I think we each need to learn when, because I don't think synchronicity, for instance, is just a yes. Oh, it's there, so therefore yes. Sometimes I think the universe will bring synchronicities to test us, to say, oh, are you going to say no to this actually? And so, which I wanted
that's
to,
why
Kathleen,
having that good community.
Yeah,
that's why having that, like, a good community is important. Like you need people to be like, Will, that girl is just like the other 4 girls. Right? Like, don't we wish we had people like that?
See, but the trick there is, though, that each person in the community has their own hangups too, you know. And so I think as long as we have friends, I think the important thing is, do we have reminders to continue to self-reflect,
Mhm.
to check ourselves? I think that's the most important thing. And so but yeah, community and other people
Well, like
again are
community, not just
essential.
one
And
person with a hang up. You kind of average
yeah,
out the hang ups.
exactly. No, exactly. But that's the real thing, right? Is that it's the community that will provide that. There's no single guru. And right, that's one of the things I said earlier that I used to fall into, is that there's this one
Mhm.
teacher, one, and that failed many times. And yeah, and I'm now creating community, because I think for me, like my work and my career was what I had focused on so much, but I had left that to the side for, you know, social life and romantic life. And so I'm realizing those require as much time, effort, and energy as my career. I just wanted
Mhm.
to, someone, Kathleen said, can you repeat the quote? So it's tell me and I will forget, show me and I might remember, involve me and I will understand.
It's very much a, teach someone to fish kind of thing.
Yeah.
It also reminds me, there is a quote that said, talking about Zen is like trying to scratch an itch on your foot through your shoe.
Precisely.
You got to just sit
Precisely.
down, sit do your practice.
Yeah. And it's interesting, you know, this is again another, you know, imagine everyone here in the audience, you know, knows or has heard of Rick Doblin by this point. And it's just that he has been such a beacon. If there's anyone I still gururize, it's Rick. And I know it's probably still probably at the point where it's going to break down. But the reason I bring that up is because, like, I could have all of these conversations, and I've had many of them with Rick about, like, oh my God, and source and reincarnation. And I worked with this medium, and I did work with a medium who was actually very incredibly powerful. And like, and Rick will kind of always just be like, either like, okay, we're getting too far out there. We're talking about stuff that we can't prove. And then B, he would always be like, so what's actionable? And you know, and
Mhm.
and so, you know, when I think back to him and his work, you know, like look what he's done in 36 years. You know, maybe it seems obvious right now, we're getting all this investment and billions of dollars, but it's like, you know, he sort of chugged at it since 1986. He's been very practical, very actionable, and in terms of his what he wanted to create. You know, so one of the things I've learned a lot from him is, as I spent a lot of my last 5-6 years diving into a lot of the spiritual teachings, definitely Ram Dass, but I'm not sure if you're familiar with Nisargadatta and I Am That. Like, but I got so much into this stuff, especially like Nisargadatta and some of Krishnamurti's stuff, where I'm like, again, beautiful stories,
Mhm.
but again, in my day to day, like they're not very practical. And the reality is, I'm still here, you know, and human and suffering. And so you know, yeah, I
Yeah.
think our relationships here as humans are that's where the party's at. I think that's why we're here.
With Nisargadatta, I feel like, I was talking about that self-centeredness and that fixation. I feel like he ventilates me a little.
Ha 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 ha. I think
There's a
that,
little breathing room.
yeah, I think, you know, the thing is, I think each teacher, each book is, you know, I have this saying that I, you know, came up with some years ago, that in order to do transformation work or to evolve between ourselves and another person, or ourselves in another community, is that
Mhm.
we have to have enough commonality and enough difference, right? Because if we only have commonality, we're just preaching to the choir, and we're not actually shifting. But if there's
Right.
too much difference, we either lose people or we're fighting and we're violent. You know, so Nisargadatta, I think, has and probably will play big roles in my life, but it's not all the time. You know, I think it's dependent on where I am and how much am I struggling in my mind. The thing has helped me the most with is just get out of your mind. Like, and it's this very thick text. So I mean, for those who actually, I've only recommended it to like 2 or 3 people. It's very dense. Meaning, I think it has a role for some people. I think especially people who are locked into mind and thinking
Mhm.
all the time. Like I Am That will like, I think, give you a nice kick in the ass in terms of you're not going to
Yeah.
think your way out of Nisargadatta. But yeah, for
Yeah.
other people who are not so locked in the mind, I think it's not so helpful to recommend certain things.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't pretend that I've read it cover to cover. It's more like a bibliomancy thing. Just open
Definitely,
it and
no one try to read that cover to cover. Like, actually, yeah, kind of just open it to whatever page and then read that one chapter at most. But you know, even
yeah.
getting through 3 or 4 paragraphs of that can be a challenge sometimes.
But enabling people to do the actionable. And
Mhm.
you were talking about the pressure cooker earlier. My metaphor for that is a game of pickup sticks.
Mm.
This is one of the things that, that I really liked about my, my LSD experiences. Really helped me sort of organize my soul's to-do list, and in a way that is organized. I want to use the word organized because I can tend towards disorganization. And it's like, will you just take care of that thing first?
Mm.
Don't even worry about the rest of the pile. It's
Exactly.
like, you got just the thing on top, one step in front of the other. Okay. And then you've got another thing, and it's
Yeah.
enormous. It's an enormous pile, but my work is to do what's in front of me.
Beautiful. Yeah, and then I'll share another Rickism in there where he
Mhm.
taught me, and I've been embodying, and I'm not fully there, but he would always say, Will, he's like, patience is the fastest way, and I'll
Mhm.
often tell people, and I actually think it's true. Like Rick is the least optimistic person that I know that MDMA will become a medicine. Like I've after certain articles are published or the FDA says it's a breakthrough therapy, I've gone around, I'm like, oh, how great. He would never bite. He'd be like,
Mhm.
yeah, but we still needed to finish phase 3. We still need to do this, the FDA. And so it's this interesting way of like, he doesn't, those are signs for me. Again, he's embodied this, like, don't get possessed, don't get in so enticed by like one little thing. It's like, okay, cool, I did this, wonderful, I'm gonna feel it, and what's next? I've got to take action. I'm noticing I just realized there's a few Q&As, questions in Q&A. Should we take a look at those, or what do you
Let's
think?
take a look at those, and I just copied and pasted "I Am That" by Nisargadatta Maharaj because I don't want to type it. And please
Yeah.
forgive me, I'm using Amazon because it was the first thing that came up.
Yeah. But I would say for most people, I think that I would imagine, if you have not read the teachings of Don Juan, I think it's a really, really powerful and beautiful thing to start with. I think, unless Nisargadatta really calls you.
Yeah.
So someone says, speaking back to our hangups, matching client. Hold on, maybe you can help me make sense of this. And what's a good way as a clinician to protect against this? Oh, so to me, that one's, I think all healers, whether they're licensed clinicians or not, I think it's important to be working on yourself actively. And I would actually say, in terms of psychedelic therapists that I know, or again, underground or above ground, I would say less than 10% of people that I know are doing their own therapy, number one, which I think it's a tragedy. Number two is supervision and having a teacher who is much better at you than psychedelic therapy. So I have one or two supervisors who have been doing this work for about 20 or 30 years. And it's this humbleness of yes, we know, and I'm going to continue to learn. I think those two things are key. So actively having a healer yourself, and then also ideally a teacher or a supervisor, is I think the best thing we can do.
Yeah. And I think it's really a quality of life issue. It's almost like a frog in the boiling water. Like, once you start, like, I find, you start doing something like therapy, and then you're like, it falls by the wayside, and I can almost see
Yeah,
the
totally.
degradation, but it takes a minute. Like my mind starts to unravel
Yeah,
slowly until it's
yeah.
like, whoa, what's wrong?
Exactly. Let's see. Someone else asked, what are the primary recommendations to create sustained change following a medicine experience? To me, it's like what we've been talking about today. I would say having a good sense of how you're misaligned in life and what you want. And I would say two major things in journaling and keeping track of this is, what are my triggers? Right. To me, there's this another, I'm full of quotes if you haven't noticed. One of my favorite quotes is by a guy named Fritz Perls, and I think the founder of Gestalt therapy, who says, we live in a house of mirrors, thinking we're looking out of the windows.
Mm.
Okay, and it's a very powerful message to say, I have not found a trigger. And even though I've loved to try to keep them, I've loved to keep the enemy outside of myself and said, that's the person, that's the problem, that's the group that's causing the world pain, it's the wealthy, it's this or that. Upon real introspection, sincere introspection, all of those have fallen away. So I would say triggers are such a beautiful gift for people to start saying, where are my hangups? And then number two, I would say patterns are your other gift into seeing, if there's a pattern in your life, you are the creator of it. Okay. And so I think that is another way of saying, okay, these are two basically unconscious ways, triggers and patterns, to saying, how am I misaligned? I mean, we could talk like another hour just about that, but hope that helps some people.
One of the things that I like, I'm kind of visual, and I don't love journaling. I like to map them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because, the anger is attached to the unworthiness, is attached to the impatience, is attached to the, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think basically what I'm saying by journaling is basically like intention, sincerity, attention to these different things in your life, and not just, when it comes up every 3 months, when you go to an ayahuasca retreat, it's the, there's also this, I think, unhealthy part of the healing world, whether it's with psychedelics or not, that it's like, oh, this has to be hard. Like you got to work on yourself hard. I actually don't think it has to be hard. I actually think it needs to just be intentional, consistent, sincere, and you can transform. I don't think that transformation has to be hard or difficult or painful all the time.
That's a quote from the Yoga Sutras that you just said.
Yeah. Okay, I didn't realize that, but I think that's the thing. I think that can be another hang up. It's like, okay, I've got to work on myself. And I found that at certain points in my healing journey were like actually keeping me from what I wanted, because I thought I had to keep working so hard. And I'm like, wait, actually, no, I don't so much.
Yeah, I mean, success in yoga happens when you do it for a long period of time with sincerity.
Yep. And it reminds me of this funny story. I have this one of my teachers, his name's Ron, I'll just use his first name for now, but he's big into meditation, and so he's all about like body and chakra alignment. So anytime we were at his in-person retreats, this is all before COVID, he would talk about sitting in a chair, sitting straight up. Our hips have to be above our knees, and our knees are above the feet to sort of align everything. And it was funny because like one time we were like on day 4 of a 5-day retreat, and we come in after break. I'm just backing up so I can show people. And we walk in and he's like sitting cross-legged like this. And it was obvious he was tired. And then I like called him out in the group. I'm like, wait, Ron, didn't you just spend the last 4 days, telling us that you have to sit this way? And he's like, he sat for a second. He's like, kid, he's like, once you learn how to sit like this, and he sat straight, he's like, you get to sit however you want. So, which goes to your point. And I actually think there's truth to that, because it really is. Yeah, these tools can help us get there, and then we can sort of let go of the tools. But
well, what the best 2 words, what 2 words best describe Zen?
Yeah, please. I haven't done a lot of reading in the Zen literature. So.
Not always so.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
I love it.
That was an hour. It flew by.
Yeah, that was wonderful, Daniel. Thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate that.
Thanks for being a part of it. I would, love to keep up with the work that you're doing. I like seeing you when you pop up across my event horizon. Dope talk. Thank you. Great sesh. People really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Yeah, and Dan, I also want to appreciate, like, I've realized more and more community, everything. I do my work. I'm a healer. I do my one-on-one work. I'm trying to trickle into other things, but really, I've also come to appreciate how people have very different talents. And I think people like you that gather, that create events for people, it's really a gift. So thank you for what you do.
For sure, man. It's super fun.
Yeah,
it's super fun. And I'll see you around the campus.
Yeah.
Do you have anything, any last words you want to leave people with?
With all those quotes, maybe I gave you all the quotes. It's just, just be patient, be gentle, but also, be intentional and sincere about your journey. So, yeah.
All right. Many blessings.
Okay. Peace, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
See you guys in a half hour at our next talk.